everybody. Hello, Professor. Hello, Professor Thomas, Professor Buhlin. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. That was one of the videos that we have received from our sponsor for our program. Kåre, can you stop the video, please? Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Professor Thomas, how are you? Thank you very much. And Professor Buhlin and all of you from everywhere, thanks for joining us. We still have 5 minutes to officially start our journal club. Hello, Professor Miglani.
Hello, everyone.
Professor Miglani is the head of the educational committee of Apec. Sanjay, please go ahead.
Yeah, on behalf of Apec, I welcome you all, and let's have a great time. I think Dr. Nikufer will do a great job.
Thank you very much, Sanjay, for joining us. I hope you are doing very well in this very difficult situation of COVID-19. How is the situation in India now?
The situation is improving now, so we don't have much cases. The positivity rate has come to 2% now, so we are okay. This wave was manageable, actually.
Good to hear that. Good to hear that. Okay, before we are officially start, I'm going to tell you the story of this journal club because I think now it is more than a year that we are doing this, and we have received a lot of good feedback from around the world about this journal club. We start actually this work by inviting the first authors and corresponding authors and all the co-authors of various publications from around the world, and then we start actually discussing with them about the methodology of the publication and everything. And the good thing is now our young fellows and the resident postgraduate students from around the world, they know how to read an article, which is very, very important to us, I believe. It is sometimes even more important than writing an article, because when we write an article, we know how to select the publication. But for clinicians, for young fellows, that they want actually to choose the best way to practice, they need actually how to select the best article and how to critically appraise an article to start it, actually. So we are also waiting for our appraiser from Turkey, Dr. Fatima Beethoven, and she just sent me a text that she is trying to enter, so I'm going to help her for that. Sorry for 1 minute, please. I hope you can manage to join us. Okay. All right, now we have all the authors with us as well. So I'm going to ask authors to introduce themselves and have some introduction while we are waiting for Fatima Beethoven to join us. Okay, we have actually a greeting from Nigeria. Thank you very much, Donna, for joining us. And it will be really good if everybody feel free to turn on the videos, then we can see all the faces, and it helps the presenter and the authors to see you all and make it like a real situation rather than a virtual communication. Okay, Professor Thomas Kvist, if I pronounce your name correctly, please go ahead and introduce your colleagues to us as well, and teach us how to pronounce the names as well. Thank you very much. and I really appreciate for accepting our invitation.
Thank you, Mohammed, and everybody else. Good evening. Saturday evening here in dark Sweden at this time. And we are very glad that you invited us to be able to discuss our paper here together with you. And this paper is an outspring from a big research effort made in the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm. And from that group, who was the starters of these studies, which were called the Periapical studies, is associate professor from Karolinska Institute, Kåre Buhlin, who's with us tonight as well, one of the authors of the papers.
Okay, so can you pronounce his name again, please? Kåre Buhlin, am I right?
Kåre Buhlin.
Kåre Buhlin.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, welcome, Kåre. Thank you very much for accepting and joining this platform.
Thank you, Professor Nekofar.
Perhaps most important of everyone here is the main author. The first author of this paper is Don Sebring, who is a PhD student of us, where I is the main supervisor, and he's a part of the Sahlgrenska Academy in Gothenburg University of Gothenburg, Sweden. And
hi, Dan, you did a great job. You did a great job.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Although we are going to put you in a very hot chair and we are going to ask a lot of questions. Be ready for that.
That's good, because that's a good training experience for him for the upcoming dissertations. And my name is Thomas Kvist, and I'm an associate professor also at the Sahlgrenska Academy of University of Gothenburg, and I am the main supervisor of Dawn, and I'm also taking the initiative for making this endodontic part of the Periapical project that we are doing together with the Karolinska in Stockholm.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for this introduction. So we have also Dr. Fatima Beethoven, Associate Professor from Marmara University. But Fatima, please introduce yourself to everybody.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Nekofar, for the introduction. And thank you very much to all the participants who joined us together today. I'm Fatima Beethoven, and I'm actually no longer at Marmara University. I changed my university. Okay. I'm an endodontist, and we have a lot of work with Dr. Nekofar, and he kindly invited me to be the appraiser today for this paper, and I'm very happy to be here. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Fatima. And I'm very happy and very proud to say that we have two visiting professors from Tehran University of Medical Sciences. The first one is Professor Sanjay Miglani, who is also the chair of the Educational Committee of Apec, and also Fatima Beethoven as well. She is also one of the visiting professor of Endodontic Department of Tehran University of Medical Sciences, which I affiliated to. However, this program is actually a program that we do that with collaboration with Asian Pacific Endodontic Confederation and the Tehran University of Medical Sciences, and I'm proudly moderate that. What we do, without any hesitation, we are going to put the authors in a very hot chair and start asking our questions. And usually at the end, we are going to say sorry for very harsh questions. So please be ready for that. And all the participants, they can type their questions if they like in the chat room, and you can read them. And also, if they like actually to speak, they can raise electronically their hands and we turn on the microphone and they can speak. So because I know we are going to have a very, very long discussion and we want to finish in 90 minutes. So I'm going to ask Fatima Beethoven to start and share the presentation with us. And Fatima, the stage is yours, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I'm going to start sharing my screen.
Please.
Okay. So, okay, is it on?
Yes, yes, we can see that very well.
All right. Once again, thanks to all the authors to be here. And I'm very happy to be hosting this one. Professor Thomas Kvist and Kåre Buhlin, I think it's the correct pronunciation. And,
close enough.
Thank you, close enough. And also Don Sebring. Is it true? No, if not, please correct me.
That was very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And so today I'm going to be the appraiser, and also Dr. Nazanin Zargar is an honorary appraiser for today. And I would like to start with a quick reminder for those who have read the article beforehand, and also it's going to be a little summary for those who haven't read the article. So the question was, is there a relationship between endodontic inflammatory disease, which is called as EID, and a first myocardial infarction? And the groups of 805 patients in the experience MI versus healthy controls. It says that my internet connection is unstable. Can you see it?
Yeah, please continue. It works.
It works
fine.
okay?
Yeah.
Yes, Fatima, we can see.
All right. So the findings were missing teeth make cause an increased risk of a first MI, so is endodontic inflammatory disease. So this is a quick summary of the abstract.
It seems, Fatima, your internet connection is not very good, but
to get into the PICO. Internet connection is a problem. That's a problem. Okay.
Okay, now it's better. If you turn off other devices and
okay?
just yes, it's fine
other
now.
Devices. Okay. So the population is patients with a history of a recent myocardial infarction. So my first question to the doctors is, what is classified as a recent myocardial infarction?
Okay, so if I understand the question is, what is the recent MI? When you say MI, what is the definition of the recent for that? Am I right, Fatima? Yes, I think Fatima is disconnected and try to reconnect. While we are waiting for Fatima to come back, maybe one of you kindly can answer the question.
Yes.
Yeah, my co-authors could very well
Yes,
say something, but I think the subjects in this study.
I can answer that first, Don, if you want to.
Okay. Yeah.
Please go on, Don. Go on.
Okay. Because the subjects of this study, they were recruited during their hospital stay for the diagnosis of a myocardial infarction, and I'm not the best one to tell you exactly how that is diagnosed in the medical field, but I guess it's by the SD elevations and such. But they were recruited in conjunction with the emergency stay at the hospital, so that must account for a recent myocardial infarction. But Kåre perhaps could have a better answer than.
Basically, you're totally right on. I could just fill in that it's from the recent MI was 8 weeks or a little bit more before the dental examination. So it's eight weeks or more from the MI until the dental panoramic X-ray, as well as the dental examination within the dentist's office.
Okay, good.
And as Don said, it's elevated. It's they are recruited from the ER unit, and they have survived their first myocardial infarction. All of them have had their first ones. Those who have had a second one or third one was excluded.
Okay. So the goal was to select the first MI and also the recent, it means recently in 8 weeks at least.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. While Fatima, because Fatima sent me a text and she's trying to come back with a better connection. While she is coming back, I'm going to ask also another question, which is about the methodology, because the methodology in general, you mentioned that it is a part of a cohort study that was performing for some other reasons, and you selected some of the cases for this study. So in that situation, your study wasn't a cohort. It was like a cross-sectional. Am I right?
Basically, it's a cohort. It's a cohort from the 1,600 patients that was recruited, and that was patients and controls all over the kingdom, from the north to the south, from the west to the east. And then we have all of these patients and controls are within the endodontic research investigation as well. So it's not a cohort from the first sample, it's all of them.
Let me change my question in that way. Was it a longitudinal study or just a cross-sectional study in terms of the cohort? Because you just select the cases from the study, and this wasn't like a longitudinal or following the cases like that. Am I right about that?
No, we are following them now. So it's a longitudinal study ongoing. It's still ongoing.
Ongoing about the, and looking at the endodontic lesion as an indicator in this study as well?
Yes.
Yes,
we're going to look at endodontic variables as well, prospectively. So yes.
Okay, I think there is a comment from one of our participants, Farhan Raza Khan. Please go ahead, ask your questions.
Yeah, because Can
you introduce yourself, please, Farhan? Can you introduce yourself from which university, which country?
Yeah, I am from Karachi, Pakistan. I work as an associate professor in operative dentistry and endodontics in Aga Khan University Hospital. And I'm an associate program director of the residency program. So what I have read, I've just read the article, some part of it, but it's clear that it's a nested case control of a matched case control design, because they have selected cases to begin with. Had it been a cohort study, then it would have been exposed versus non-exposed. But it's clear from the PDF that they have selected cases and controls. So once you select the patient who already have disease or cases, then it becomes a retrospective investigation. Now, you may argue that it was part of a big cohort, but in that case, it would be a nested case control in which matching was done. So in my opinion, it's a clear example of matched case control investigation. Thank you.
So what do you think? Kåre or others, please go ahead.
I would agree with that this paper that we are discussing today, that it is retrospectively, and there's no denying that. But the project, the Parodontology project, and the collaboration with the periodontologists that we're going to follow these patients, and we have done it. So it's part of a longitudinal study and a future paper.
Yeah, longitudinal study, we can accept that, but it is like a case control study rather than a cohort study. Do you accept such a thing? Because you already mentioned such a things in the text as well. I think Fatima is connected, and Fatima can also raise her concern as well.
Question, yes.
Yes.
Actually, so sorry about the unstable internet. So sorry about that. So I think you already started discussing my second question, the study design. So I'm wondering, actually I missed some part of it, but as I saw that, I'm going to ask this one.
No, Fatima, you can carry on your presentation.
Okay, I can. Okay,
and then we go
I'm
back to this question. Don't worry.
All right.
Yep.
All right.
Please.
All right. So patients with a history of a recent MI is the population. So the investigated condition was the effect of endodontic inflammatory disease, and the comparison condition was healthy patients with no history of myocardial infarction. The outcome of interest was myocardial infarction according to an endodontic inflammatory disease or not. So this was our PICO. Actually, my first question was what is the study design? Because it says that the Parodontology is a Swedish prospective case control project, and that this study was actually based on this one. So what I wondered was the study design.
Okay, maybe we can go back to that.
Yeah.
So do you want to explain the methodology? Because this is the main question.
I will try.
And a study design. Please, Dan, go ahead, please.
So the Parodontology study is a case control study on MI patients with recent experience of MI. And as Kåre said before, it's patients recruited from the ER, and the dental examination was done at maximum 8 weeks later. So that's what constitutes a recent MI for these patients. And it is a case control study with subjects recruited at the moment of disease, or how you could say it. But what we have done is that we have looked at all the full material, all these patients, not just picked some of them or a sample. It's the complete material, and looked at endodontic aspects of these patients for this paper.
So can we say that it's a case control study, or
yeah, a case control study, yeah.
May I say something?
Sure, Professor.
I think there is perhaps some kind of misunderstanding, because we have to make us distinguish between what is the Parodontology project, which is going to be a follow-up study of those patients and their controls that had first myocardial infarct. But this actual paper that we are discussing now, this is a matched control study examining and comparing the MI patients with their matched controls at baseline, so to speak. And in the future, we will have data to know what will happen both with those that had the first myocardial infarct and the controls in the long run. And currently we are working on that, and the Periapical group is working on that, and to see what things happen with deaths, another myocardial infarct, a stroke or whatever, in a period of up to 7 years after the inclusion into the study. So we have to distinguish between the project per se and this paper per se, which this paper is a match control study.
Match control study.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Professor. So when I first read your article, actually, I just kind of remembered the Netflix documentary called The Root Cause, which was banned later on due to the press release of several endodontic associations, including the American Endodontic Association. The producers claim that people having RCTs on the right-hand side, per se, are more likely to have breast cancer on the same side. So the question is, does correlation equal causation? And what was your main motive in conducting this study?
I think we were equally upset when we saw this movie at Netflix. And
have you watched it?
Yes, I've seen it, and it's
upsetting.
It's upsetting, and very, very special, and as you said, that they correlate cancer on the same side with the teeth and all that. I think they undermine themselves quite a bit. But so this study is done because I think it's easy to make these assumptions just reading all these articles that correlate infections with systemic diseases. And I think the question it's valid to continue to research this topic, because it might be some kind of connections, but you can't make these assumptions based on the findings right now, not between endodontic diseases and not between perio as well, I think. So you have to be careful and conduct well-designed studies, and be careful what you write, and what words you choose when you present the results, so that they are not interpreted in the wrong way. So I guess it was to show that this film is not accurate, actually.
I know that your study actually started way before this one, because the study took time between May 2010 and February 2014. So we can say that it has been more than 8 years now since the population was investigated. So what were the main obstacles in gathering the information or preparing the study? I mean, what took it this long?
The Periapical study, they're trying to investigate the connection between marginal periodontitis and the first MI, and I think we write that in the paper as well, that was the main reason for the Periapical study. But I think these subjects are in need of collaborations between the different fields in dentistry, and that's how this paper came to be, a collaboration with the Periapical study group. And I guess that was established after the initiation of this project. But maybe Thomas and Kåre, because they are more responsible of that than I am, could tell you more about it.
Dr. Kåre.
Yeah, well, Sweden is a much smaller country than, for instance, Turkey. That means that obtaining these kind of patient material and control material takes time, and you have the ability when you come to the ER to either die and then you're not included, or you can survive and then you have the opportunity to say no. And several patients said no, they didn't want to participate. And also doctors or hospitals as well as dentists said also no to be part of this. And that means that of course, collecting 1,600 participants takes time.
Yep. Yeah, we can say that it's a very, very difficult situation. You did a very dedicated job. I can see that. Thomas, do you want to add something?
Perhaps only that another reason is that this was originally projected as to evaluate the influence of marginal periodontitis. So it was not until I think in 2015 or 16 that we as endodontists approached this group and asked for a collaboration, and that was actually after ESE, European Society of Odontology, had a meeting in Amsterdam in 2014, when we decided that we would like to encourage endodontic groups to collaborate with greater groups, including periodontists and medical researchers. And so after that, we had this, we approached this group, Paracrank group, and set up this sort of subgroup with Endocrank, as we call it nowadays. So, and then it takes some time to evaluate all the radiographs. And so we presented one paper before this one where we have a methodology paper where we described how we managed the panoramic radiographs in a way so that we could ensure that we get the best out of the information that we could have from the panoramic radiographs. Yeah, and so on. I mean, research takes time, and that's we all know that, don't we?
Yeah, definitely.
Back to the previous question about the correlation and causation, if we want actually to go back to that, because I want to actually ask another question. You mentioned that as an indicator, so you looked at the endodontic infection as an indicator of MI rather than the cause of MI. Am I right about that? Because if it is the case, then it is like when I have, for example, a sneezing or I have cough, it is an indicator of COVID-19, such a thing. Is it the way that you try to show it to us? I don't know, Kåre or Dan or Thomas, any of you, please.
Of course, it's always you always want to be able to prove causation in some way. That would be really great, but I think none of us had didn't think that we were going to be able to do that with this study. We have lots of studies that have shown associations between endodontic disease and systemic diseases, and I guess we had the opportunity because this is a good material. It's so many patients and match controls and lots of confounders that we have lots of information not to use it. But I don't think we have to have a different study design if we're going to be able to show causation, and if we ever is going to be able to do it in this regard, because it's complicated diseases, both endodontic disease and cardiovascular disease. So we have to be humble and know that it's going to be very difficult to show causation.
Okay, good. Farhan, you have a question, please go ahead.
Yes, my point is, since it's a longitudinal study, and with the case control or even cohort, you can only show associations. Cause and effect relationship cannot be established until unless there is a clinical trial. So we cannot establish any form of causal relationship with such study designs. Only we can show associations. Thank you.
Okay, authors,
I would agree
do you
with that.
agree?
Yes,
Do you agree with this
we are
comment?
totally aware of that.
Okay, so you agree with this comment, because one of the
Yeah.
things is the
This
feed.
study has this study doesn't show any causation, no, as Don said.
Yep. Okay, good. Because the thing is, the problem is the feedback sometimes for people that they just read the abstract of some article, they say that, wow, there is a correlation. So when they see a correlation, they are worried about, wow, if we have an infection in our tooth, wow, what should we do? We may need to extract it, even we don't want any root canal treatment. It is dangerous for our heart. So we need to be very careful for actually disseminating this information to our patients sometimes. So it has sometimes some indirect effect on them, even if we try to say that, don't worry, it is just an indicator. It is a risk indicator rather than something that we can say that it is the cause of the disease. So that is good actually to emphasize on that again. And thank you very much for confirming this idea. Okay, Fatima, please carry on.
Okay, actually, I've got a question about the methodology as well. In the article, it says that all radiographs were analyzed by 3 observers, and but it doesn't actually say if the observers, the evaluators, were endodontists or radiology from radiology department, or so. I was wondering who the 3 observers were and when the X-rays were taken, because it doesn't specifically say when the X-rays were taken. I mean, after the MI or before the MI. So can you please specify this?
So I think all the X-rays were taken after the MI, definitely, at the maximum 8 weeks. The patients were scheduled for a visit to the dental clinic near the hospital. And that's when the X-rays were taken. Kåre could correct me if I'm wrong. And
Correct.
also for the recruited healthy controls, they were taken, I think approximately at the same time, perhaps a few weeks in between there. But
how do you justify the exposure to radiation for them? Because they don't have any complaint or they don't have any problems, any tooth problems. How do you justify the exposure to radiation?
That is definitely an ethical dilemma to expose these healthy patients with no problems to this panoramic X-ray. But that's I think that's a valid point to use panoramic radiographs instead of something like full mouth. Taking all the internal pictures or CBCT even, that panoramic radiographs might be a bit nicer.
And then are they precise enough to give you all the information that you need about the endodontic infection?
Yeah,
because
that's a real problem. No, it's not the best way, especially in endodontic diseases. Absolutely not. But we have tried to manage that the way we can, and by having these 3 observers. And to answer your question, these 3, there were 1 general dentist and 2 dental students in their final year, actually, that did all these assessments of the radiographs.
So why weren't the observers chosen from the endodontists or from radiologists? And why did you actually choose these observers?
Yeah, why did we choose these observers?
I think I can help there. Yes. I think that actually to get the job done. And
the job done. Yeah, that's
yeah. So
great answer.
Yeah, and another comment here about there is a, for those who are interested, we have a separate paper about how we did the evaluation of the panoramic radiograph. But I think one thing it's very important, as correct as you say, of course, that you may miss quite a lot when you use panoramic radiographs, and it's not as accurate as you would like it to be. But when you do a match control study, you have the benefit of, you have probably the same difficulties in both groups. So if you underdiagnose or overdiagnose or whatever you do, you do the same in the both groups, so to speak. So the comparison, if you keep the false positive rate low, then the comparison between the groups will be justified, even if the correct, you will never reach the correct numbers. And you will not do that even using CBCT, because what you are after is, is the inflammatory status of the teeth, which is impossible to judge even from CBCT radiographs. So I think that just that is the thing that is a match control study makes it easier to say something if there is a difference between the groups, because probably the biases in interpretation of the radiograph is the same in both groups, so to speak.
Okay. So okay. Any other comments?
Yeah, we did calibrate the observers quite well, or how you would say it. They went through a calibration process. So we tried to handle that issue with not having specialists doing the assessments.
So
this calibration was one of the questions that we have received in the chat room as well. Thank you very much for mentioning that.
Do you want me to elaborate on the calibration process, or?
Yes, because they said that at least we need some calibration process and also some statistical test to make sure that they are in accordance with each other.
Yeah. So we actually had one endodontist and one radiologist. They looked at a sample of these pictures, the panoramic pictures, and they established by themselves a gold standard, if you will, a truth that so many teeth have periapical lesions and so many root-filled teeth and so on. And then we had these 3 observers calibrated toward this gold standard, and we tested it at several times during the study, before calibration, directly after the calibration, and then some time after the calibration. And yeah, I think we write that in paper that it wasn't a perfect score by any means, evaluated by Kappa, but also the specialists, when they were doing the gold standard, they didn't agree between themselves as well. So I think this is a problem that we're never gonna be able to solve. You can't have perfect agreement between different observers, or even within yourself, because it depends on so many other factors actually. So but it's important that you handle it in some way, and this is the way we did it, because otherwise you won't be able to draw reliable conclusions from the findings that you eventually do when you have assessed the pictures.
Okay, thank you very much, Dan. Thank you very much, because you are a good appraiser as well. Thank you. You already appraise yourself. This is good. This is good. When you critically appraise yourself, we don't have anything to say. Thank you. Okay, Fatima.
Okay, actually, the next question is about the methodology now. In the paper, it says that a family history of cardiovascular diseases was more common in patients than in controls, and smoking was more frequent amongst patients at admission. So how did you rule out, exclude the fact that the patients group was a smoker group, hence more likely to have cardiovascular diseases regardless of the DMFT score or the number of periapical lesions?
I think we had smoking as a confounder in the statistical analysis.
Yes.
In order to handle that issue. I don't know if I have any better answer than that.
Other authors, Kåre or Thomas, do you want to say something about this question? Because that was a question that I have received from other participants as well about the number of the smokers. Obviously, this is a predisposing factor.
Yes, and since you see that amongst the smokers at admission after the myocardial infarction, quite a lot of them quitted smoking actually. So it was a lot less smokers in the end as in the beginning. So when they did the dental examination, many of them actually had quit smoking due to the risk for dying, since of course there is a risk for myocardial infarction if you smoke.
Yeah, but
the groups were not actually equally distributed in terms of the smokers. So
no,
my question was,
yeah, I know. That's what we are trying to tell you, that smoking is a risk factor for myocardial infarction. Therefore, among the controls, there are a lot less smokers in general.
The thing is, I have received actually two questions about the same topic. One from Professor Arshad Hassan. He said that not just smoking, also the health-seeking behavior and oral hygiene habits of two groups can be a confounding factor. And also another question from Professor Farhan. He said that, in fact, current smoking and history of CVD is more responsible for MI than any other variable in this study. So what do you think about these two comments?
So of course, if you smoke, you have a more unhealthy lifestyle, and that means that you could also naturally have other lifestyle factors that's contributing to the myocardial infarction, as well as a more, how should I say, worse dental health. And at least in Sweden, there is some evidence that there is those who are within the blue-collar workers that smoke more than white-collar workers today. So of course, smoking could be an indicator of all kinds of disease readiness, regardless the disease. That's the answer for the first one. So that's correct.
So it was actually, if the groups were more balanced in terms of the smokers, maybe you could have ruled this one out.
Yeah,
in
but
the
if you had done,
group.
yes, but if you have done that, we would never have founded these 1,600 patients and controls within 4 years, because a lot of those getting an MI in Sweden are smokers, as well as they are men. Men is also age groups. Women are protected until menopause.
Professor Thomas, please.
Of course, I think the good thing with this study is that we actually used smoking as a confounder in the statistical analysis. So we adjusted the model in the logistic regression analysis for smoking, the effect of smoking, since we knew that those with a myocardial infarct were more frequently smokers. So that was included in, and that is one of the, I think, one of the good things that with this study, that we had control over some of the confounders, at least some of the important confounders, which are listed in table 1 in the paper. So I think that's the only way that you can handle it, really, because the other way, since it's it's a patient control match control groups. So you can't do it otherwise, because otherwise you have to try to make it some kind of other study design, I think.
Okay, so the thing is we are worried about is the effect of these confounding variables on the result. So because of all of this explanation, how do you manage to statistically get rid of these confounding variables, smoking?
Yeah, we did that by including smoking in the logistic model. So there was an adjustment for that when we did the. If you have a look at the, for example, in the figures and the tables, let's say, for example, the figures, the figure 1, then you can see that there are both the odds ratios are crude ones and there are adjusted odds ratios, and the adjusted odds ratios are taking, for example, smoking into account into the model. All right.
Yep, thank you very much. Professor Ziad from Lebanon.
And then, of course, there is some kind of control of many other factors. Since we did this match control, so they are matched with age, they are matched with gender, and they also match from where they live. So that is sort of a socioeconomic match.
Factors were balanced.
Same region. Because people
I think we have a question
in different areas. So if you,
Professor Ziad, please go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. Sure, it's very interesting topic. I'm Ziad Mjais from Beirut. My question is, there any correlation between the quality of the root canal treatment and the result if the root canal treatment is done according to the objectives, if we have any pathology, periapical pathology or not? Is this was taken into consideration?
We didn't actually assess the quality of the root canal treatments, unfortunately. A root-filled tooth was a tooth that had some kind of radiopaque material, either in the pulp chamber or in the root canals, but we didn't put any emphasis on how well they were actually filled. There are studies before that have correlated root-filled teeth with periapical lesions to coronary heart disease, but and of course, if you have a bad root filling, the risk of having a periapical lesion also increases. But unfortunately, we didn't look at it in this study.
Okay, and there is another question in the chat room. It said that is it possible to take a smaller sample size and exclude the confounding factors? And I think we already answered that by adjusting the odd ratio that Professor Thomas mentioned, that which means that we already exclude that variables from the study. Okay, Fatima, please carry on.
Okay, actually, I was going to ask the second part of the this sentence. A family history of cardiovascular diseases was also more common in the little bit, and vascular diseases be more prone to caries, because it was actually discussed in the discussion too about the cardiovascular diseases.
I didn't really get all of that, but the question.
Yeah, I think he said that, can we think outside the box? Would the patients having cardiovascular disease be more prone to caries?
Yes, I think that there are other confounders that we haven't been able to look at. We look at a lot of them, but of course not all of them. I don't think we know all of them. Yes, I think that is possible, because the people that suffer from MI could be living like a a harsher life that includes many factors. It could be diet and socioeconomic factors and so on, and could be more prone to also suffer from caries. I think that connection can also be done.
Yeah, because in the discussion section, actually, the proportion of missing teeth and the caries, is said that they inhibit a proper dietary intake, so causing more problems with the cardiovascular system. So the correlation of the weight and DMFD and cardiovascular diseases risk of each group would be really interesting to see. So this is a pro-crank and anti-crank group. So maybe the nutritionist would have been added to the subject, and it would be really interesting to see the results of this. So we actually, the paper tries to explain the caries being an indicator of the cardiovascular diseases, but maybe cardiovascular diseases may be an indicator of caries too. So I just want to think outside the box.
Yeah,
and
it could be both ways, of course.
Okay, there is a comment from Professor Sanjay. Sanjay, please go ahead.
Yeah.
As a person who recently
this is regarding Fatima's out-of-the-box question, that would patients having cardiovascular disease be more prone to caries? I had MI just 6 months back, so I can tell you from my own experience that people who had MI or history of MI are more conscious about their diet. So the chances of them getting caries are actually lesser.
After MI or before MI, Prof?
After MI.
After MI, yes.
Thanks God, you're much better now, Sanjay. We are happy to have you between us.
Yes.
Okay, great. And there is a question from Noor, that if she wants actually the question herself, or he, I don't know, Noor. Oh yes, Noor, he. Please go ahead, Noor. Ask your question yourself.
Yeah, hi, how are you doing?
Thank you very much. Please introduce yourself. I know you very well, but for others, please.
Yeah, I'm now studying in Medical University, Azerbaijan Medical University, 5th course. And inshallah, in the future, I'll be implantology for teeth implants.
Okay, go ahead.
Now, my question about the smokers people, if the percentage of the smokers people is higher than the normal, so maybe this indication for myocardial that you face, maybe because of smoking, not root canal inflammation. So how many percentage of the smokers people in this study is more than 50 or 60 percentage?
Dan, do you get the question? The question is maybe this indication just because of the smoking more than the root canal inflammation. So if it is the case, then smoking is stronger. So the correlation of smoking is more stronger than others. Obviously, we know from other studies that also smoking is a predisposing factor for myocardial infarction. I believe Professor Thomas answered this question by that adjusted odds ratio already as well. So that is the most important part, I believe. But what do you think then? Do you want to add anything or others?
No, I agree. I think that is a valid concern, and probably it could be true that smoking, of course, is maybe more important than a periapical inflammation or endodontic disease. But yeah, I think Thomas answered it the only way we can, that we had tried to adjust for it in the statistical analysis, and then we have to take the results for what they are, I guess.
Okay, and there is also another question that they say that maybe patients with cardiovascular disease and caries, it happens just at same time without any correlation. How we can prove that there is a correlation between these two? Maybe these two variables just happen simultaneously like that, without any correlation.
the two variables of endodontic disease and
yeah, they say that the question said that patients with cardiovascular disease and caries can happen without any correlation, these two variables.
Well, the only thing that we can measure are correlations, actually, in these kind of studies. So, and then there might be biases that make that correlation is not correct. But with the material we have, that is, we have matched controls, and we have taken into account all the possible confounders that were measured into the statistical, and then we still have these correlations. And that, I mean, it's difficult to do so much more than that, because then you're coming to the question whether there is a causal relationship or not, and that is much more difficult. And as somebody said here before, it's even almost not impossible to think, but I think it will be almost impossible to perform a study, a randomized controlled study where you have patients that suffering from caries and periapical lesions and leave them without treatment and see if they, compared to a group which do not have these diseases, will develop more myocardial infarcts after 10, 15, 20, 25 years. So the task to actually study the causal relationship, I think the challenge is immense about doing that. So the best thing I think we can do is to make good studies about correlation and try to compensate for confounders and do it the best way we can. And then from that, see if the correlations are strong or if they are not so strong. And from how strong they are, we can make some kind of perhaps conclusions about if there are any causal relationship. But because causation is something that is very difficult from many points of view. I mean, already all the antiques, they didn't find out that even 2,000 years ago, and I don't think we have done that yet. What is causation really? It's very difficult to say, and this is I think it's so many factors that influence. But yeah, fine. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's have a break because we have actually a sponsor. We are going to watch one of the video from our sponsor. My colleague, please go ahead. Zohre. So while we are waiting for that video to start, all right. Maybe technically they are not connected yet. So let's see. Okay, thank you very much. right, Fatima, please go back and share your screen with us.
All right.
While you're going back, there is a question again from Professor Farhan. I think, Professor Farhan, can you tell your question yourself, please? Okay, why? Okay.
Sure.
Please.
I can ask my question. So I've
Yes,
stated
please.
two things. The first thing is that since there is an extensive matching done on age, gender, and geographical location, so technically one cannot assess the effect of these three variables on the outcome. So that's a technical limitation. So that's why extensive matching is kind of discouraged. But here they have done extensive matching. So ideally, rather than matching done on gender or a geographical location, ideally matching should have been done on smoking or history of cardiovascular disease, ideally. So that's the one point. And my second point was that I had asked that people are asking about putting KDs into equation, but it's clear that at the univariate level, KDs has shown no association. So it means that there is no point putting KDs into equation. The data suggests in this paper that DMFT and missing teeth are somehow associated, but at the univariate level. But when they took the analysis further, there was no association seen at the when the adjustments were done. In fact, the missing teeth variable also became non-significant when they adjusted it for periodontal disease. So it means that none of the variables turn out to be significantly associated with MI. So the only variable that I think could have been important and could have turned out to be associated with MI were history of smoking, current smoking, and family history of CVD. But unfortunately, these two variables were not put into the equation, and they were not taken forward for adjustments. Otherwise, some interesting thing could have been, observed. Thank you.
Okay, Thomas, do you want to answer this question or this comment or add anything to that, please? Because this is a very fundamental question, I believe.
Yeah, do you want to say something, Kåre or John, or should I?
Yes, I could say something, but please, if you want to say something first, you go ahead.
I think that, of course, if you do the matching, you could have included also other factors for doing the matching. I think the three ones chosen, the gender, the age, and the geographical area are three factors that are of well-known importance as a risk factors for heart disease, myocardial infarction. So then, of course, you could have added other things, but I think it was difficult enough to find healthy controls this way. And I think that for every healthy control that you include, I think that you had to contact at least 3 persons to get one. So it's from out of 800 controls, you have contacted more than 2,500 healthy people that had a phone call and said, "Would you like to go to the dentist and to the doctor and make a medical exam and make an X-ray?" So it was difficult enough, and it's everything can be made better, but don't let the best things be the enemy of good things, so to speak. So yeah, so that's the reason. And then I don't really understand what it's true that we don't find more than extracted teeth as in general as a risk indicator, and I think that is interesting enough, and I think that we can make some extrapolation from that, but perhaps that we do that when we come to conclusions. But I mean, the criticism is valid, but you do as well as you can, so to speak. Would you add something?
Thank you very much, Prof.
Yes, I think that yes, I think the group listening here take too much emphasis on the smoking. We have to remember that in the Kingdom of Sweden, not that many people anymore smoke. And that if you look at the data, there is only basically 26% of the patients and 12% of the controls that smoke. And if you look at the never smokers from the baseline at admission, there is more or less the same between the patients and controls. So around 40% is never smokers. So the criticism that you raise around smoking is a little bit harsh, I would say, and maybe not unfair, as Thomas said, but at least I think that you take too much emphasis on it. You also have the risk factor for cardiovascular disease regarding diabetes, for instance, that we haven't discussed at all.
I do agree with you, but I think the concern of Professor Farhan is about the number of the variables that we try actually to match them with each other. And he believes that maybe this matching on too many variables is a bit counterproductive. What do you think about that?
Of course, if you take too many factors in, you will not get a good result. You have to only take in those factors that actually counts. If you take in others, it will be a result that is basically blurring the real results.
Okay, thank you very much. Fatima, please go ahead. We need to manage the time as well.
Okay. Actually, I really enjoyed and understood the results by looking at the forest plot in figure 1. And it clearly shows that missing teeth is a huge risk factor, whereas people with filled teeth are good to go. So what I could not understand was why the teeth with primary periapical lesion rather than secondary periapical lesion were associated with an increased risk of cardiovascular diseases.
I think many of us maybe would agree that the untreated periapical lesions with the infected necrotic pulp and the root canal would be more serious than the one that is actually been treated, however not healed. But we have to remember that the x-rays that we look at, they only show one point in time, and we actually don't know when the root fillings were done. Maybe we are actually looking at healing processes and not disease. We actually don't know that, but maybe the inflammation, the infection is more serious in the primary periapical lesions than the secondary ones. So I think that maybe these findings actually has some kind of biological explanation behind them, if you would.
I think, Dan, we need to be very careful about this biologic correlation, because we are going just to claim that, actually you are going just to claim that this is an indicator, not the causation, as Professor Thomas clearly I think showed that. So we need to be very careful, because when this, I think it's coming to the question that Professor Ziad asked about the quality of root canal treatment. We need to be very careful about that, because when we say secondary periapical lesion, that means the quality of the root canal treatment wasn't good enough to give us a good healing. However, again, this is like a cross-sectional looking at the lesion. We don't know about the previous radiographs to compare with this radiograph. Maybe it is in a healing process. That the answer can be that. I would say such a thing. Rather than, we need to be very, very careful by claiming that this is a biological correlation. I believe such a thing. I don't know, maybe Professor Thomas or Professor Kåre can correct me if I'm wrong. Professor
Yeah,
Kvist,
so-
do you want to
yeah, so
I think you are perfectly right.
Yeah.
And actually, the question is also that if you look at this table, neither of them is statistically significant when you look at
exactly?
it. So that is the first thing. That is the correct answer. Neither of them is statistically significant when you look at the whole in the whole group. And I think that, but then when you come to the subgroup analysis for the one of the younger groups, that you find that primary periapical lesions is significant. It's inevitable that you make some kind of, you have to discuss and think about possible biological explanations.
Yes.
With the background of other knowledge, but you can't be sure, and it's, I would not say it's speculation, but it's educated guessing about what could be the reason why, if there is a, but in the whole material, there is no statistical significant influence of neither of them.
Right. Can we say that non-treated teeth are maybe a more risk factor rather than an endodontic inflammatory disease?
I wouldn't claim that.
Okay. Okay, I got another question, by the way. You mentioned about the age groups, and my next question is about the age groups. Because there is actually a part in which you actually discussed about how you classified the age groups. So what I was wondering is how you did it.
The patients in this study, they were all quite old. We didn't have many younger individuals. And you have to put the cutoff point somewhere. So you could put it at 40. There are studies that have showed that men under 40 are more prone to or have a high risk of heart disease if you have this and this variable. If we had put it at 40, according to that study, we would have had so small groups. So we had to put them somewhere. And I think that's why we decided on the 60 and then the 65 for the younger ones. But of course, you could put it actually anywhere if you wanted to. And interestingly enough, you get different results depending on where you put this cutoff point, so to speak.
Because the younger group is actually like 30 years gap in between, and the older group is just 15 years gap in between. So how did you actually get the cutting point?
For the second one, where we had it at 65, we wanted equally large groups. So that's why we chose those ones. So we have approximately the same number of individuals in that one. So that's how we decided on that one. And for the other one, I think we just found that it was suitable to put it at 60 because there were so many older individuals in this study. And we had the limitation with the 75 and no older persons than that. Maybe that wasn't a good answer, but that's how we resonated when we did it.
If you had an ideal balance group, where would you get the cutting point?
Maybe it could be interesting to have an even younger group around 40, perhaps, because we find interesting results looking at the younger individuals that suffer from MI. And maybe that's where we can find the strongest correlations with diseases in the mouth, because those are the patients that will show such findings that could be correlated, maybe higher or maybe stronger to the heart disease compared to older patients that they have lived a longer life. They've gathered more and more other factors that could play a role in their MI, so to speak. So maybe have a younger group than what we have here.
Okay, Professor Farhan has a question. Please go ahead, Professor.
Well, I don't have a question. I would like to support the author on a point that what would be the right age group. Look at the data. The data suggests that the mean age is 62 years, plus minus 8, the standard deviation, which means that 95% of the samples had were of age 45 to 78. When this mean is 62 and the standard deviation is 8, it means that 95% of the subjects recruited in this study were between 45 and 78. So in that case, the right cutoff was around 60, 62. So what they have done is absolutely correct in terms of putting the bar near 60, 62. So that I will support them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Farhan. Thank you very much. To be fair, actually, because you asked good questions and also speak in favor of them as well. Thank you. This is actually the nature of this discussion. Thank you very much.
My next question is actually about the age groups too. Why would any periapical lesion be a risk factor for a first MI in the younger age group, but not in the patients above the age of 65? How would you discuss this?
I would claim that the older patients, they have so many other factors that also associate with the first MI. So the mere presence of a periapical lesion may not play as big a part in the heart disease problem for that person, but for a younger person that perhaps should not suffer from heart disease, then the oral diseases play a much bigger role because they don't have all the other factors yet. Is my.
But are you convinced?
Regarding the periapical lesion, primary periapical lesions, I mean, is the confounding factors just the only explanation why it would be the MI would be more seen on the younger age group than in the older age group? I mean, just the confounding factors.
Perhaps it's the factors that we don't have any knowledge of in this paper, that the periapical lesions in the younger ones actually is a sign of a harsher living and lots of other problems, and the periapical lesions is just a result of that, but perhaps not. It's of course maybe the reason that they get the MI. We already know that we can't discuss the causality in that way, but that if you suffer from MI at a younger age, then you also live a harsher life that affects the mouth and could present itself in this way by showing more periapical lesions.
Professor Thomas, do you have anything to add to this justification?
Not really. I think that Don answered it. We don't know. We can only make, educated guessing about the correlation. And for me, it seems, let's say, from some fundamental biological knowledge about how people are and how we people are. If you are in younger age, have a lot of problems with your teeth, it's more likely that could affect your general health in comparison with those who are a little bit older, because they also probably have more other health problems that also could affect the general health. And heart disease, and so it's. But of course it's a little bit of it's a bit of speculation, but it's if we go with the other studies previously the correlation between poor oral health and general health problems are more prone in younger age groups than in older age groups. I think that's
the only things that I want actually to add to that is because we mentioned something just as a risk indicator rather than just a risk factor. So we need to be very careful about that. I think in this part of the article, these two concepts are a little confused with each other because this is just a risk indicator rather than a risk factor. Am I right?
Excuse me, Muhammad, what is the difference?
You're right.
What is the difference between an indicator and factor?
Yeah, because I'm trying to say that when we see a young person with a lot of decay or a lot of missing teeth, okay, this can be an indicator of a lot of things, indicator of bad hygiene, indicator of bad behavior, or a lot of things. So it's not just the cause of the MI, because they may have a lot of other problems at the same time. So it's back to the general hygiene as well. So therefore, it is just an indicator. As I said, like when I cough, people think, okay, we need to be very careful. He may have COVID, something like that. So cough is not the risk factor for COVID. Virus is the risk factor for the COVID. Coughing is just an indicator. It's just a sign, something like that. So the maximum things that I can accept from this article, from this correlation is, okay, the periapical lesion or the endodontic infection or missing teeth can show something to us, and we need to be very careful, especially if they are young, that they may have other issues as well. If I'm wrong, please correct me. It's just like a concern that I have.
It's perhaps it's because I'm at least not I'm not have English as mother tongue. I don't really see the distinction so clearly between a risk factor and a risk indicator. But I see. I think I get your point. I get your point. Yeah.
Yes, I would say that you're right. That of course, periapical lesions are risk indicators. Yes, it's not a risk factor.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that is the most important thing. Okay, Fatima, please.
By the way, I know that it's getting late, especially for those who are out of the time zone. So this is my final question, actually. I want to talk a little bit about the, because I really do wonder how the dental treatments work in other countries. So as far as I saw, there is no difference in between groups in terms of education. If so, what might be the main reason for patients who had more decayed teeth or more teeth with periapical lesions not to go to the dentist than the control group? So what might be the reason? Is the dental care costly or covered by the state in Sweden? Because they're all equally educated groups, but one of the groups have more caries.
The dental treatment in Sweden is costly. It's partly covered by the state, but it still requires quite an income if you need lots of treatment. So definitely, I think that could be a difference between different people, how much money they have and are able to spend on their teeth, which could affect these results that people that do not seek dental treatment could have more decay. They have less fillings, which we have seen in the results, could perhaps.
And more missing teeth at the same time, by the way.
Yeah, true, because yeah, you go to the dentist and that's where you lose your teeth. Absolutely. But yeah, the dental treatment is costly here in Sweden. It is.
So Dr. Perhan has a question or something to add. Please, doctor, unmute yourself.
Yeah, see here, I would rather support the author on another point, that here, look at the data. The data suggests that the missing teeth are nothing but a proxy of a periodontal disease. And here, the difference in the group is because of the periodontal disease, the missing teeth, right? And why periodontal disease is different? Because since you have not, the authors have not obtained data on attachment loss, probing depth, bleeding on probing, and things like that. So we know that.
I think that's another study.
Yes, it's a different study altogether. So here the difference is coming from missing teeth, and missing teeth is nothing but a proxy of periodontal disease, right? Rather than having caries or DMFT, here missing teeth are because of the periodontal disease, periodontal issues.
No,
we don't know
actually,
that, sir.
Yeah,
We don't know that.
No, you can, with the help of data, when you adjust for periodontal disease, the effect is nullified, which means that the factor that is playing behind the curtain is periodontal disease here. So it's a strong indication there.
Well, actually, in the article, it says that the tooth loss, the reasons for the tooth loss are not known, are unknown, actually.
Exactly, but here you can get some idea, because when you assess the effect of missing teeth, it's initially significant, but when you account for periodontal disease, suddenly the effect is nullified, which means that periodontal disease is operating and is somehow responsible for that effect. So there is an indication.
Prof, Dr. Nekufar, please unmute yourself first.
Professor Ziad, please go ahead. Thank you.
Yes, again, I have a question. We know that from the main causes for MI are diabetes, obesity, and blood pressure, cholesterol, all these factors. And in general, we know diabetes in general are correlated with caries, with teeth problems. Were these factors excluded from the sample or the selection of the patients?
The diabetes was added as a confounder in the statistical analysis because we had data on that. The other ones that you mentioned, I don't think we didn't include, but diabetes was added as a confounder, and as such, it should be adjusted for in the results.
Yeah.
But I agree that the diabetes could lead to more caries and pulpal infections and so on.
Yes.
Professor Sanjay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know, before I say something, I would like you to know that Dr. Farhan Raza is the General Secretary of Association of Operative Dentistry and Endodontics of Pakistan, and also one of the counselor of Apec. I contacted him for one of his papers. Anyway, coming to this particular topic, I must congratulate Don and the team. See, if you're talking about any systemic disease like CVD, there are 40 confounding factors. So you can't account everything in one paper. We are dentists. We are not, you know, cardiovascular surgeons or So I think they have done a very decent job and brought in the main factors, and it also opens up an avenue for us to do future studies. If you want to exclude something, exclude and do another one. I think some of us were very harsh on them, especially regarding smoking. I think they have done a fabulous job. There are limitations in this study, but I think my congratulations to Don and the team. They have done a good job.
Thank you very much, Sanjay. Obviously, it is somehow we try actually to make this discussion for our student, for the sake of our student that they are here. We say that we are going actually to make something for a better discussion. It's just like that. Obviously, this is a very difficult study, very difficult. You should be very brave to initiate such a thing. Obviously, none of us are brave enough to do such a thing.
Yes.
And in endodontics, we don't have enough evidence. You know, the problem is in endodontics, the level of evidence is very, very low, and it is one of the best articles. And you know that when we choose some article to discuss, it must be an evidence-based study, which we congratulate Professor Kvist for this group, and also Dan to be brave enough to start such a thing. And thank you very much from Kåre and Thomas and also Dan to accept our invitation. I know you are very brave to put yourself in this situation, open yourself and expose yourself to a lot of questions like that. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, Sanjay, please.
I also must appreciate them for having such a large sample size. You know, in a country like India,
yes,
having this size is okay. But in a country like Sweden, I must appreciate they must have done a lot of work actually.
Okay, there is a question from Professor Zargar. Professor Zargar, please.
With warmest greetings to my colleagues and professors. I want to help to writers. I think writing this kind of articles, such as case controls or retrospective studies or cohort studies, are so hard, and I think that digesting this matter is harder. But according to the case control studies checklist, the study design should be primarily mentioned till readers know the level of evidence, and this title, I think, have a heavy burden. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're right. So that was the main things that we asked them maybe in the future to mention the methodology even in the title. So that helps all the readers to not increase their expectation from the results as well. Okay, we have Professor Ibrahim Abu Tahun, and we usually ask Professor Abu Tahun at the end actually to give us his comment. He used to be the president of Apec and also the dean of the educational committee before Professor Sanjay Miglani. Professor Ibrahim from Jordan, please go ahead.
Thank you, Professor Mohammed, you and the great Fatima, our good friend. One more great session with you again. First of all, I want to tell you, sorry, you cheated me. You told me we'll start at 8 and you started at 7. And then you sent
no.
This is number one. Second thing, I want to congratulate the authors of this article, a really great article. And if I want to conclude, because you discussed a lot of things which are really valuable, I would say that we believe now that a qualified root canal treatment, the effectiveness of this qualified treatment is very well established, which means that it will reduce the risk of heart disease, it will reduce the risk of cancer, it will reduce the risk of complications. So in my opinion, whatever the variables are, the starting point is starting point for disease and starting point for cure is the root canal treatment itself. And this means that our prime concern would be not to focus on the technical aspects of root canal treatment as shown on the radiograph. These are nothing. These white lines are white lies. I think most important should be to focus on disinfection. This is my first thing I want to say. And the second thing is that Mohammed, you discussed something very important, which is the cause and effect. Cause and effect, which is the combination of action and reaction. This is a mutual, let's say, combination or relationship between two or more things. The documentary of Netflix you have discussed today was very clear. 97% of the women who had root canal treatments had breast cancer. But again, at the same time, it is normal because all of them, they are in the age between 50 and 75. And the highest incidence of root canal treatment is usually in this age. This is number one. I would say that all these women, in my opinion, had skin wrinkles. So could I state that skin wrinkles are the cause of cancer in these patients? In these ladies with breast cancer? I don't think so. So I agree with you, Mohammed. Maybe we should explore in the future more and more the underlying reasons, the underlying relationships between these variables, these extra confounding variables, which are more important. Now they are discussing the theory of Kakehashi. They are criticizing it that he doesn't consider the confounders of disease. They don't believe now that bacteria is the main cause for endodontic disease. And if there is no bacteria, there is no endodontic disease. A lot of discussion now in the literature on these topics. But I would end up saying that thank you again. You are the star of the educational committee. I want to thank also Dr. Fatima. I'm really happy to see her, Dr. Sanjay, and all my colleagues, and also the authors. Thank you very much, Mohammed. One more great session with you.
Thank you very much, Professor Ibrahim. And I think Fatima is going to end with a very important question from Dan. Fatima, go ahead, ask your question. I know this is the last question.
Yes, actually, this is an additional question. What kind of study if endodontic inflammatory is a causal vascular disease?
I think we cannot hear Fatima very well, but as I can see, okay, repeat it, please.
What kind of a study should be conducted to see if the endodontic inflammatory disease is a causal and direct factor for myocardial infarction in an ideal world?
In an ideal world, of course, we should maybe aim to try to do a randomized clinical trial. And in this, here, maybe we could have patients with periapical infections or endodontic disease that some we treat and some we do not, and that we collaborate with the medical field and do physical examinations and follow these patients for a period of time to see if they will eventually suffer from a myocardial infarction or not, and do the physical examination as well and see if we can find differences between these groups. But we would have, it would be very difficult to do it because we need lots of patients and we need lots of time to be able to evaluate the incidence of such events such as myocardial infarction, and maybe that would be very difficult to do. But by including also the medical examinations and maybe surrogate endpoints instead of myocardial infarction, we could get somewhere. I think that would be interesting but difficult, and ethically maybe even more so difficult.
Impossible.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I think it is too late and we need we are going actually almost to close the session. Before we close the session, we're going to say thank you very much from Fatima Beethoven. And from now, we are going to send this certification by post to her as well. But now I'm going to ask all of you to turn on your microphone, put your hand together for Fatima Beethoven, our appraiser today. Thank you very much, Fatima.
Thank you
Then
very
I'm
much.
going,
Thank
with
you
the
very much,
permission
Prof.
from Professor Thomas and Professor Kåre, to thanks their student, their brilliant student, brave student, Dr. Dan Sebring. So Dan, thank you very much. However, I think this is the certificate for Professor Kvist, but I'm going to say first for Dan. Thank you very much, Dan. And we are going to put our hand together for Dan. And you did a very, very great job. Congratulations. The future of endodontics needs somebody like you to be brave enough to produce and create such an amazing evidence for the future generation. And we really appreciate your acceptance in this session as well. And I don't have enough word to say thanks to Professor Kvist and Professor Kåre Buhlin, because I can say that I'm one of the students as well. So especially looking at the publication when I was young, however, I'm still young, but when I was young in the board exam, many of the articles that published by Professor Kvist and his co-workers was the publication that it was mandatory publication for us to read them and to put them together for ourselves. So this is a great, great pleasure, Professor Kvist, to see you even in this virtual way. Then thank you very much. You are very humble to accept our invitation, and hopefully we can also learn more and more from you. So if you want to have some word, please go ahead.
I would like to thank you for inviting us. It's been a very interesting session, and I saw that also there was a lot of participants, and I really appreciate that you invited us to let us discuss this paper with its pros and cons this night. And I hope that we can see each other again soon in the future. Thank you for all the kind words to me and Kåre and Don, and thank you once again, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much. Kåre, please, you go ahead.
I can just agree with what my colleague just said. I have liked it a lot, and I think that these fruitful discussions about the article with the pros and cons that all articles have will encourage us, both you and us, to have better studies and better conducted studies in the future. And that is what it's all about, to conduct good research, and in the long run also make better health for the patients with better. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed, and we put together our hand for all the authors again. Before we say goodbye, I'm going to ask the secretary of Apec, Dr. Mohsen Ramazani. He has got something to announce. Dr. Ramazani, please.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. Good night to everyone. It is 10:12 p.m. in Iran, and on behalf of APEC, I should thank all persons responsible for this fruitful and informative discussion, hot discussion, as Mohammed Hossein said. And I hope to continue this kind of conversations and scientific conversation in such, in fact, horrendous circumstances these days in the world. Thank you again, but there is something here that Professor Nekufar had led me to mention. In case of the International 5th Symposium of the Iranian Association of Endodontists, which is focusing on two most subfields of endodontics, which needs much more focusing, which are vital top therapy and the regenerative endodontic procedures, that about which I am serving all endodontists worldwide as the scientific chair. If I have time, I can show you some documents regarding this symposium. Do you let me, Professor Nekufar?
If you just send us some information, then I can disseminate that to all the group that we have. So that can be in the future, because as you mentioned, it is too late for some of us. And I promise actually to finish on time. And therefore, if you let me, I will circulate all the information in most of the group that we have for them to know about your symposium. The symposium that Mohsen mentioned is also, I think, propagated on IFI and also Apec website as well. But I will send that information to you as well. But Mohsen, you can share the poster or share the program if you like.
Yes, yes. Okay. Just wait a minute. Can you see?
Not yet.
So please let me share my screen. Can you see now?
Yeah, we can see the screen, just your screen.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's seen actually.
Okay, now it's seen.
Wow.
Yes. No, the previous one.
Can you see now the poster of the symposium?
Yes, we can see the poster, which
Yes,
is on the.
This is the poster. This is the poster supported officially by the Apec, and also the web down. You can see 5/5 endosym.ir. All information is there for you. You can see easily and follow. And this is the list of speakers. Let me mention some of them: Professor Periapical from Iran, Professor Yuji Huang from America, Dr. Asadian, Professor Bakhtiar, Professor Sheikh Nizami, Professor Qudusi, Professor Fazla from Iran, Professor Kartikian from India, Professor Sabiti from USA, Professor Zandi from Norway, Professor Azar Pashur from Canada, Professor Nesrin Eitaha from Jordan, Dr. Khazai from Iran, Dr. Buchi from Chile, Professor Jirat from Thailand, Dr. Meraji, and Professor Jafarzadeh from Iran, and also Professor Nekufar. You can see here from Iran, Professor Mahmoud Rabinijad. All of you are sufficiently aware of him. He is the inaugural presenter of the symposium. Please join us and see his lecture. Professor Talal Nahlavi from Syria, Professor Gardinali from Italy, Professor Kawashima from Japan, Dr. Periapical from Iran, Professor Mesci from Belgium, and Professor Askari from Iran. These are the, in fact, presenters of the scientific lectures in this symposium. And let me show just a very, very short clip and then finish my words. Sorry. It is not paid, I'm sorry. Okay.
No, I think for some technical reason. Okay, thank you very much, and hope to be able to see you all in the Iranian symposium as well.
Yes, the time of symposium is 1st to 4th of March 2022, and it is virtual meeting which is to be held on Zoom cloud meeting platform. All of you are officially and sincerely invited to this meeting. The information will be sent to you via the Professor Nekufar. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohsen, for the information. And we are going to end the session by just broadcasting another video from our sponsor. Thank you very much all. Have a very, very good evening and good night. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, guys, thank you very much, all of you. See you in 3 weeks for our next session. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye, Prof.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.